the Fab 4 Uber Fan channel, where we will be bringing you tons and tons of Beatles content. Everyone loves the Beatles, as they should. We want to bring you stories and commentary that you've never heard before. Yes, the Beatles have been around for 50 years, but there's so much we don't know. It's almost like World War II, right? My name is Tommy Lennon, second cousin twice removed to Fab 4 founder John Lennon, or Uncle John as we call him. I have some wonderful stories to tell, information to share, and we're going to begin today as we rate the 15 worst Beatles albums of all time. We have a lot of ground to cover, so without further ado, let's begin. By the way, I suggest you subscribe and like this channel now. Coming in at the bottom, number 15, I give you an album which many of you are probably already familiar with. Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. Commonly thought of as the Beatles' weakest album, this choice should probably come as no surprise to you. So I'll start with the cover, which looks like it was made of nothing but a bunch of faces hastily sliced out of magazines and periodicals. Faces of famous people they probably wish they were as famous as, but they weren't, obviously. Not when you dress that way. In fact, it kind of looks like it was made by a serial killer, right? The Beatles themselves are pictured here, all dolled up in the mod fashions of the time. Their faces look bored and uninterested, as if they'd rather be almost anywhere else. Aunt Mimi once told me that they were actually forced to wear these outfits by Brian Epstein. No one realizes how abusive. He was the original Ike Turner, really. He was a violent-tempered man. Nonetheless, whether they were bullied into these outfits or not, it sounds like they were bullied into writing this album and performing it. By this time, John Lennon, or Uncle Johnny, Uncle Johnny to me, he had sort of regressed into taking his lyrics word for word from circus posters or from newspapers. I read the news today, oh boy. Oh boy, another song. It's just that easy, isn't it, John? In fact, on this album, John Lennon even let his 3-year-old son, Julian, write a song on it. You may have heard of it. It's called Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds, and while it was written by a 3-year-old, it's certainly one of the better pieces on this album. Paul McCartney, who fancied himself the intellectual of the group, drew much of his inspirations for this album basically watching countless hours of Benny Hill. When it all comes down to it, the best song on this album is called With a Little Help from My Friends. This is easily Ringo's most accomplished masterpiece, and it's also one of the most misunderstood lyrics of all time. Far from being a message of unity, it was actually a nasty stab at Pete Best, their former drummer, who was depressed and destitute and at the time would have welcomed any help from his ex-bandmates, yet they wrote him a song instead. Catchy goddamn thing, though. Moving on, coming in at number 14, I give you Abbey Road. Abbey Road was the last album recorded by the Beatles and is a hodgepodge affair at best. To say they were stoned during the recording of Abbey Road would be a complete understatement. The front cover bears this out, showing that Paul had forgotten to even wear any shoes. Ringo is dressed like an undertaker, as if to warn us that the Beatles were dead and buried, or at least dying. The back cover of the album basically just shows a blurred image of a woman in a purple skirt. Beatles, next time you make an album, more so next time you make an album cover, consider hiring a competent and or sober photographer. Just a suggestion. Side 1 is a long, dirty affair with one highlight being Octopus's Garden. Once again, Ringo is forced to save the day. By this time, John had submerged into his heroin phase and was only able to come up with songs that were 5 words long. I want you so bad. Good God, even I could write that. Paul was basically writing nursery rhymes about silver hammers or subpar blues rip-offs. Christ, he sings "Oh Darling" like he's a fucking second-rate John Lennon imitating Tom Waits. Side 2, which is supposed to be their magnum opus, is merely a collection of cast-off tuneless ditties with no beginnings, no endings, strung together to create the impression that they actually still had some sort of fucking ideas. Ironically enough, George Harrison starts the second side of the album off very optimistically with "Here Comes the Sun." But clearly it's not coming. Not by a long shot.